Right, this is going to be another of my donated discussions. And for this episode, I've got Frisky. If people don't know from past episodes, he's obviously a League of Legends fan. Mainly, you watch the LPL and LCK, right?
Yeah, amazingly. I've been a little bit busy lately, so a bit less LCK, but like still very much on the LPL.
You want to talk about LPL?
Yeah, we can do that.
Right, obviously, if people remember the last episode we did, I would say immediately one thing that's changed massively since then, because actually, like most of the teams we were talking about, obviously, like you had a sense of who's coming up and coming down. The one team that obviously we didn't go deep on at the time was this FPX team, which has kind of been a revelation. Like, obviously, this Milkyway jungler guy actually is the truth. If people haven't seen him, he is completely cracked, and it's allowed them to beat a bunch of top teams. So, what have you thought about FPX, mate?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really talk about FPX because they've kind of had like a nothing roster. I mean, they haven't really been relevant for a couple of years. They lost LWX, who was kind of the last remaining member of that 2019 Worlds team. So I didn't even really think of anything. And I, didn't even know who this Milky Way guy was. But, watching him the first couple of games, it was, you got a sense of like, okay, he can be pretty good. The rest of the team felt like crap. Like Xiaohu still hasn't really been that good. Dekdom and Life are just kind of refugees from the LCK, if you'd call them. So, they've kind of had a bad couple of years. So, I thought nothing of this team. But yeah, this Milky Way guy is absolutely the truth. He's proven to be, looking like one of the best junglers in the LCK. And a great jungler can absolutely, carry your team far. So, I mean, even with the other teams struggling right now, I don't know. I'm not sure about them being top 4 yet, but like certainly I think they can be a playoff team and they will be a playoff team. But like top 6 is certainly potential.
No, the thing for me is, like, it is mainly about the Milky Way guy. Like, he is just, like, if people don't know, like, carry junglers are just different in nature. Like, in the West, we say someone's a carry jungler. We usually just mean they pick the carry champion. Like, they put the actual literal carry into fucking carry jungle over there. Like, this guy was fucking smurfing in some of the games I was watching. It was unbelievable. It's like, mechanics look sick too. No, the thing for me is, if you look at the rest of the team, like, I agree with what you say. Like, the real problem this team has on paper is the most famous players are literally the Koreans in the bot lane. And the joke is, even if this was an LCK team, that's about the most like fucking lackluster bot lane you could make of people who've been on top teams. Because obviously, like, they have years ago been on good teams, but they were like the worst players on those teams, or players that weren't really respected as carries. So no, when I saw that in the movie, I remember just thinking, who gives a fuck about this roster? It's obviously rebuilding year, But actually, yeah, if you actually have a stud jungler, you can win games in the LPL. I'm with you. They won't. This isn't a team that's going to Worlds, but the key thing for me is it could at least be like interesting in the playoffs. To me, it's almost reminiscent of what OMG was last year. It's like they weren't really likely to make it to top 4, but you knew that if the wrong team gets them in the playoffs, it could be spicy, could be an interesting matchup.
Yeah, the playoffs and the LPL are always so crazy. There's always some like weird upset, especially because only the top 2 teams are guaranteed to go to the lower bracket. You have to play one of those 2 teams to get to the lower. So like it's happened. It happened to, we thought OMG could maybe make top 4, and they got out of the bracket pretty early on. I forgot who they lost to. I think they lost to LNG, if I remember correctly.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this team was nothing. I remember Dekdom back in 2021 when he was on Nongshim, and I actually really liked him. I thought he was going to be a really good up-and-coming ADC. But yeah, since he's been on Damwon, he's just looked like nothing. He still doesn't even really look that good now. But yeah, like you said, with a carry jungler, this team, has, potential, especially going into summer. Who knows?
Right, one thing I do want to ask you about is, obviously, last time we did an episode, funny enough, NIP, who's still number 2 and just lost to FPX, they were also in a top position, but that was because at the time they hadn't played any good teams. Right. Now we've obviously got to see them play a bit. What have you thought of this team? Because obviously, if people don't know, it's basically the top side, the jungle and top of OMG plus Rookie, and it's actually been quite interesting so far, right?
Yeah, no, I was a little bit surprised. I don't know, I wasn't too sure about the team just because, sometimes it's just, you see a team with Rookie on and you just see the players on there and you just kind of feel like he's been cursed for so many years now that it almost feels like it's going to continue. And I wasn't sure about Aki because he was not one of the best parts of that OMG team, but his looked really good. Rookie's still playing well. Shanji's, fan still, I think, very good. It's tough right now because there's a couple top laners that I think are a bit better than him, but that doesn't diminish him. He's still excellent. Even Folktik has kind of surprised me a bit. I'm kind of surprised that he's been better than he was. I didn't think, I don't remember too much of him from the past, but I still remember him being like that outgoing and spectacular. But he's done service well. I mean, this team, if BLG, the last kind of series with, Ben hasn't been amazing, and Jun's had mostly good games, but his last couple weren't great. I mean, maybe they can compete for the number one spot. I mean, it's certainly open right now.
I mean, the key thing for me is like, this isn't a bad split for Rookie. He's definitely good. It's not his best, but he's certainly above average. He's one of the better players at his position. And yeah, it actually has just worked with the OMG players at the moment. It's looking good. Like the Shanji guy, he was one of the players I was a bit scared of because, like I said on the past one, I often wonder when you have a team that like looks like they fit together as well as OMG, oftentimes, if you take the pieces apart, it just doesn't work anymore. Like individually, they won't do the same thing. Somehow it's like, they either have the same vision for playing the game, or maybe people literally even help each other in a certain way. But the Shanji guy just looks really good, mate. Just looks great, even outside of OMG. Like, it turns out that was just a good, whoever scouted him, you just did a great job. He is pretty good himself. And actually, suddenly it gets quite exciting because, as you point out, like essentially all three of the traditional laners on this team are good. Everyone actually seems like they're good at their job, which the point is, in past years, it was always either old school Jackie Love who you could rely on to throw you game, or just the top laners that he's had over the years, because people don't know. Man, he's had some fucking bad, even though the joke is the best one was the Shy, even the Shy will hit you. So yeah, the difference is, like, I was literally holding back the whole time. And this is why I actually do feel this is a legit team, Frisky. Because if anything, surely when they lose to FPX is when I should absolutely bail and be like, oh, they're going to do it again. But actually, sadly, like a Mark, I actually do low-key think this team's good. Like, it actually looks like it's working. Like, I actually, as of right this moment, I'm actually fine with this as the roster for Rookie. I feel like if he really is one of the best players in the LPL, he has a chance to go to Worlds. He has a real chance. There's even a world where, as you talk about, if you look at the current top teams, mate, there's even a world where if they get the shit together in place, maybe they steal that second spot for MSI. That would be kind of spicy, right? See Rookie back at MSI, it'd be pretty wild.
Oh, that would be great to see. Yeah. Especially if T1 maybe looking like the best team in the world right now. I mean,
the dream from T1 versus them. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it would be incredible. They absolutely can take a shot at Worlds, and the JDG roster has looked good, but there's certainly going up against this NIP roster. Both solo laners can take on the solo laners.
Oh, in fact, here's the angle, mate. Because being as obviously, like, they've played individual games. It's not like they've ever played a series of like IG against T1 or whatever.
Yeah,
like. The joke about MSI is if you get the right bracket, they could play 2 best of 5s. They could just play 2 series, right? If we get the right matchup. If you even think of the teams, like, I think that's even plausible. Like, logically, if you think about which teams are likely to be there, you can see a world where they would meet in like an upper semi-final and then maybe like a lower or something. It's totally plausible. That would be so hyped to have Rookie versus Faker, even if it is years after the prime, It'd just be cool to watch them play at this point in time, right?
Yeah, and it's not like either of them are like very bad.
No, they're both good players.
They're both, of course they're not in their primes. I mean, that would have been the ultimate dream, but they're still looking very good, and that's just the 2 best players ever, the ultimate, kind of connection. I forgot that MSI actually had the double elimination bracket because the Worlds is crap bracket so much. One day we'll get double elimination there.
No, what people need to do is just hop on the train with me. The new best tournament in League is MSI. So just as long as they keep this format, I'm cool, mate. I know it's never going to count as much as Worlds, but I just like having a dope international tournament in League. Like, I've been waiting so many years for it.
Yeah, we got one, and at least now it's not like past MSIs where it was just one team. You get 2 teams from each region, so it feels a little bit more exciting.
It's mega bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could even make an argument. I wouldn't, because obviously I think the problem with League of Legends already is they act in the circuit as if all the regions are of equivalent strength, whereas in my opinion, it's a travesty that like LCS has had as many spots as the LPL for as many years as it did, or just one less, It's not even like I'm hating on them. Like, I think I even did a tweet once where, might even have been before this Worlds, where I even just tweeted, like, if you guys think this is bad, I would go on further. Like, I would for real just put all the LPL and LCK teams in the main event, let like the top 2 Western teams go in the main event, and then everyone else. So the 3rd, 4th Western teams in each region and like PC, you'd all just be in a plane for me. And if you look, essentially the plane would become the new thing for the random fans of every team. You just watch that. But the idea when you get to the main event is that's the real League of Legends. Now we're not fucking around. There's no like participation trophies. Like, we just got all the best teams in. It's just a killer's, murderer's row, as they say. That's what I would do. So sadly, that's obviously Riot's vision of Worlds is very far away from mine. Right, what about, as you say, the big problem at the moment in the league is people don't really know, aside from BLG, who actually is the best. Because if you think about it, right, the main discussion is, and I feel like it goes back and forth every bloody week, mate, is, are you a JDG guy or are you a top esports guy? Because you can go either way on both. They're both good teams. They both show enough matches that you can believe the certain player carries. Wow, they're the new team that's going to battle BL. Who's your favorite out of those two? Who would you pick as the better team?
I would say BLG. I will say.
No, I mean at second best. Who was the
second best? Sorry.
JDG
I would pick JDG.
JDG. Okay, why?
Yeah. The problem with top esports with me is it's the same TN problem I've had. It's what showed in the FPX series, especially in that third game, is just that he, gets in so much positions where he just kind of, because I mean, I know that the game 3 situation was a shot calling situation. So, but I think, TN had some influence on that. And from what I saw how he played, I don't think he really understood the, what was happening in that. And I focus on that kind of situation because he's done that so much where he kind of tunnel visions. And I think it hurts his team a lot. I mean, comparing the players, 369 has still looked great. Jackie Love has looked awesome. Him and Mako are working quite well together. Cream is actually one I'm a little bit kind of worried on. He's been pretty good. His champion pool has been kind of light. He can play, very aggressive champions, but I think sometimes the mages he's, a little bit lacking on. I think against better people, he would be worse, especially against if we take just a matchup TES versus JDG, I think you got certainly a better mage player. So he'd be better there. And then JDG just has the ruler factor, which to me will always count. JDG actually also has their own kind of inting jungler in Kanavi.
Oh, of course.
So, I think you said on a recent SI that the Kaisa game just haunts you forever, which it will for me too. The game he hinted on.
Oh, Belveth one, you mean?
Kaisa. Yeah, excuse me. Yes, the Belveth one where he played. Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it still could go either way. TES has looked very good, and because it's so flippy floppy right now, I'm not out on TES not being number 2.
Sure. No, that's the only factor actually that does scare me a little bit on JDG, because if people don't know, the most shocking thing is the original story, if you remember, was actually the reason why it's fine and 369 leaves is they're promoting that academy guy Sheer or whatever who just couldn't play at the time, I believe. And then they initially, as far as I know, Flandre was signed almost as veteran insurance. But the joke is he's been playing the whole time and he actually looks fucking good, mate. I'm shocked by how good he looks and how often. The joke is it's he never got the memo that he was joining for that. He just thinks he's fucking joining as a carry or something. It's actually pretty legit. And so the team all of a sudden, yeah, it really does just work as a roster. It's a different one from last year's, obviously, but obviously the bot lane is still straight fire. The thing with Kanavi I've learned is this, mate, is he's just sort of like a jungle Jackie Love back when Jackie Love was a bit more sus. He will absolutely win you games. So you'll always gamble on it. But the problem is, it's not even that they int that often, but man, when they do the really egregious game where they int the Belveth one you're talking about, it just sticks in your brain for that can last months, I feel like. Yeah. So in a way, I have to always try and tell myself with those players, I'm tunneling too much on the bad result. They do most of the time. Kanavi probably is the best jungler most of the time. He is really fucking good, to be fair.
Yes.
So I can live with that. I think it's okay. The problem I have with their team, obviously, is, you just wonder to yourself, what actually happens in a world where you ever go, you can't play carries out of jungle, essentially. That's the only one fear I have is that. Because, I can't imagine Flandre's constantly going to be a super duper top laner. Actually, the top lane's a little bit weak this split. Yagao has never been a god mid laner anyway. Ruler is incredible, but even then, I actually think the weird thing for me is it was always Ruler's decision making I thought was brilliant. I'm always amazed people try and portray him. Maybe it's because of the role. They make it sound like he's the Jackie Love Uzi eye guy, whereas I've never really seen that. To me, it was always I was always just impressed how slick he is. It almost looks like he never has to mechanically outplay. He just does the right move, So they're still really good, but you can see when I lay it out like that, it's not the same team as last year. The difference last year was those 3 traditional carries, 369 Knight and Ruler, fucking hell, those were cracked out players. I know. I always even thought the real problem maybe with why fans don't actually think the JDG team was the best ever is we didn't really get any crazy radical meta switches. I feel maybe if it had switched to solo lane style in 2018, maybe then people would have seen oh shit, this team can really do it all. Because on the TES side, they're the ones that have actually surprised me, mate. Because these are the ones where, I saw the roster and I was yeah, it's a pretty good roster, but how are the pieces going to work together? First of all, 369 seems like he's fucking on one, mate. Yeah, he's had the odd bad game, but he's had some games that looked very good at the beginning of the split. Tian 1, I've just learned he's another player. I have to accept it, mate. Mm-hmm. He's going to have those games that are egregious. But the problem is, I get why the rumor, I told you, is he's some sort of scrim demon. He does also have games where he does just carry the game. He does look really good sometimes. He does sometimes seem like he has a great sense for when to gank, etc. And the rest of the team's just fire. So, yeah, I'm actually very excited. I actually think there's a real world where Like, I would have a very hard time picking the two MSI teams. Basically, it's BLG, but then I don't even know if it's either of these two teams. Maybe there is a world where Nip gets it together. It's not implausible. Look, the one thing I can tell you, maybe I can shift it like this, Frisky, is it won't be LNG. I'll tell you that one.
No, it will not be LNG.
and in fact, if you even saw the ultimate omen that even LNG know they're fucked, mate, is even they brought the Hung guy back. Even they brought him back. And you know what? I have to say this right now. I actually even reversed my analysis of this guy because I thought before, you know what? I've always thought that Mark guy is so fucking mid to like irrelevant as his support. But I thought, you know what? Maybe that's the logic. Maybe Gala wants him because he's just going to be like, you know, just do whatever he says and it'll just be one less person because obviously the Hong guy could hint sometimes. But it's the difference. The Mark guy just does nothing. He's just a fucking whack player, mate. Like the Hong guy, listen, I can live with you in sometimes if you also do something as well. Like this team, I don't look, this is Sophie's choice, but I don't even hate the roster move. The problem is this team just fundamentally hasn't worked, mate. It's sad. It's a sad team for me.
Yeah, it is. The Mark guy he really is the definition of mid. The problem with kind of support is like I think you need a support to have a presence to be like a very good support, which is why we take players like Hylissang who can run it down in int, but then when he has his pull it forward carry games, we remember it so well, and that I think has so much more impact on a team. I remember our Hong back in his Rare Adam days back in 2021 when that team did really well, when they had Fofo, and Fofo also looked like a good up and comer. Obviously that hasn't worked out either. He just has not been good. He's just been more inting than not. I am certainly sad for this team. This is the team I always was hoping that they could eventually get something done, but obviously now that Tarzan's left, they just look lost. Weiwei, I hope people don't look at this team and be like, oh, Weiwei, the finals jungler, when he was maybe the worst person on that team, and I've never thought he's had a good sense of how to work with his mid and how to path correctly and what to focus on. And with that, especially when you go from Tarzan, who's incredibly, one of the most intelligent junglers ever, to this guy, it's not going to work.
The other thing as well that I feel like people miss is that they had a different coach last year, if people don't remember. They had that guy, Poppy, who actually sadly now moved to EDG, which obviously died on their arse. And they recruited Crescent, who's the old top esports coach from the night days, if people remember. And I can tell you, this is one of those people where the joke is, like, there's a string on Kiray's back, that guy from my Discord. And all you have to do is bring up this Crescent guy. Because if you're a big Knight fan like me and him were, mate, this Knight guy is like one of the most criminal drafters I think I've ever seen. Like, his actual sense for like what to pick is so alien to the players he's putting in the server. I've never understood it. And so, look, I wasn't like hyped when I heard him joining this team, because even though his resume is obviously great, he was in top esports. Like I said, I think he was actually one of the factors that potentially hurt that team. And all I'll say is he just hasn't done a great job this time around. Like, the real reason this is so sad to me is because when I like players like Scout, I'm not saying they're like a prime rookie who can 1v9 the game. They still need like the game to be set up correctly. Like, they need the jungler to be good and work with them and path correctly. They need like probably help from like the fucking support and the coach and set up the draft. So I've got like the right comps that work for it. Like, they're acting like this guy really can just 1v9 the game. Like, he can't. And you see it this split. Like, there's a reason why he was definitely the MVP for the last two splits. But for this one, he's not even going to be close, mate. Like, he's almost become like an irrelevant player in the league. Like, he's just a good mid laner now. Like, before the system they had when they had Tarzan and they had that old setup, that looked really fucking good. Like, I would put it this way, Frisky. The thing that kills me the most about LNG is they were already exciting anyway last year. And then when they got Gala that summer, it was like, holy fuck, maybe they can actually, like, especially after that playoff run, you're like, dude, they could actually like win worlds. Like, that was like on the table. And you think how far they've dropped now. Like, now the joke is, I would be impressed if they came top 4 in the LPL, mate. Never mind win worlds.
I don't even know if they're going to make top 4. I mean, obviously they're, I think they're like 4-6 right now or something like that. So, decent, or 4-5, decently bad record. I think they'll still end up making playoffs. They're just, talent alone is going to help with that. I'm really sad that, I thought the Zika guy, he was a really big surprise, especially in summer. He looked super good. Again, the thing about LPL tops is that so many of them, shine brighter than Zika. So I think some people just didn't recognize him. I thought he was, maybe going to be like the next Bin or the next Breathe, but maybe that was more Tarzan than anything else because he hasn't been as spectacular. Gala is such an interesting player to me because he's had it's I don't know. He's never really had that bad of a team. Maybe this might be his worst team.
Sure.
But I think he needs people around him that are good enough. I don't think he's just a pure 1v9 player. I think he needs like a support.
It's so crazy though that the story goes. I'm just repeating what people say on Reddit. I don't know any Chinese. The story goes that he's the one who specifically wanted the Mac guy. Believe it or not, like that's what people say. It's a bit bizarre, isn't it?
I guess maybe he just wanted to, somebody who maybe he was tired of just I don't know, like a Ming support that was like more, hands on and just wanted a guy to do nothing, but then realized that
could be one of those, be careful what you wish for scenarios, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just
true. What do you actually think of BLG then? Because obviously at the moment they are like the number one team, and it's just obvious, right?
Yeah, it's just obvious. I mean, they're looking very good. The IG game they were kind of a bit iffy on. I was actually pretty surprised that they'd lost that. I think actually IG has looked pretty good. Maybe not good, but they look playoff good. Cryin is surprisingly good somehow. I mean, I think overall they're still just the best team. They, Jun, I think has had, for most of the split, I think he's been arguable for to be the best jungler in the world. I think he's looked fantastic. His rise the last 2 years has shocked me so much. I never thought this guy was going to amount to anything after years of mediocre splits on IG. My guy Elk is still, with this great team around him, he's continuing to have great carry performances. He's got On, who's going to be kind of in front of the team, which is exactly what he needs. Bin's probably been, a little bit of, maybe I wouldn't say like weaker because, I don't want to say he's like doing bad, but maybe just not as good as he was last split. He did just have that K'Sante game, which went viral on Twitter, which he did like 60,000 damage. But I think that has more had to do with K'Sante being a ridiculously broken champion, more than Bin playing well. But I mean, a team that has Knight, I'm never not going to have faith in. I like Knight like you and Kiri do. And unfortunately I'm always worried that's going to backfire on me because this does look like the team that maybe Knight can actually get it done.
Sure.
It feels like a team that's it's not like, the big super team of JAG was like the rare occasion that a super team worked. And this is kind of more like the less of a super team and more just like all the pieces kind of work well together and, have all kind of become the best over time. I mean, BLG is certainly the best. Put them in MSI against, in this state, at least against T1 or Genji. I think there's potential that they could still win it. It's still, they're not like that far behind the Korean teams. But I still think like T1's probably the best team in the world.
Yeah, the thing that's weird is if I tell people who don't watch the LPL that like BLG is clearly the best team, they look like they're going to win the split. And like I say, I'm like you, I'm already projecting a MSI thinking what could they do against the Genji super team, T1's lineup that won Worlds. It's already super tantalizing to imagine because it just feels like it's so much of a lock that at a minimum they're going to be top two. Look, maybe they don't win, but since they do have that double in portion in the last four, it feels like it'll be very hard for two different teams to defeat this squad. So I have them going at least. The one funny thing is though, they haven't even looked like fully powered up because actually I think Bin's had the odd game that might even have been bad, mate. Like I've seen a couple that were like, what the fuck? Because the problem is like last year he would be like a mega carry even if the rest of the team wasn't that great. So it just shows how weird it is. Like team results aren't always the same as individual form. It's just been kind of chilling a bit this split, it looks like. That's why if anything I hope he just gets activated in the playoffs and just his form rises there because coming into this year he was hands down going to be the best top laner. Like I say, dude, top lane actually low key. It's why, actually, when people like Flandre perform, it's kind of why it almost makes sense. It's actually just a little bit weaker, I feel like, this split. There's a few of the names have just dropped off a little bit. Or if you're someone like Hale, you don't even get a chance to fucking play the game. You're just in hell at the bottom of the league, aren't you?
I don't even get me started on that team. But yeah, top lane is kind of weaker right now, which actually makes Zeus, being maybe the best player in the world, a more ridiculous prospect. Right? I mean, the top lane is always going to be a factor, even in a weaker, especially right now, because there's just so much talent in the top lane. There always has to be, some notion for that. And if K'Sante keeps being, not a nerf champion by Riot, he's going to continue to have a potential to carry the whole game, because that's just how the champion works. So top always needs to be, considered because of that. What else to say about BLG? I mean, I think I'm always going to be worried about Elk. He's kind of, I wouldn't say he's been as good as Jackie Love, certainly in his career. He is, he's like right now, I don't think he's good as, just his like potential to kind of have a Jackie Love game in int. He's had those issues before. And, he's sometimes the guy, I think right now it's, it depends sometimes on the ADCs. If you've got stuff that goes in, he can be a little bit more aggressive. He's in a team right now where if they get a lead, I've seen him, go in and try to get like a kill on his own, and he'll get it because he's so powered up.
Right.
But, he can still sometimes have that kind of Chinese mindset where like, I'm going to do that anyway, regardless of the team situation. And if it's not where they want it to be, he can, kind of throw it down. But I mean, yeah, like I said, in those situations where the team is doing well, he can just look fantastic.
Sure. What about, let me think, who else would I pick that we could talk about here?
I can talk about EDG if you want.
EDG? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. This team is...
It gets worse and worse every time I watch them, mate.
It really does. It's just... it is like, I'm like, it can't be worse. It can't, it keeps getting worse. Yeah, this vampire guy, I don't think he's the only problem. I was curious if Mako leaving was going to leave, some like leadership and shot calling issues, and it has, but everything has just looked bad. This Fisher guy is not that good. The Snake, I don't know what happened to Leave. I mean, the Leave played the first 3 games and didn't look that good, and then they played the Snake for the rest of them. The Snake guy's not good. He's just not that good. I don't know why they keep playing him. I mean, there's maybe still something behind the scenes with Leave going on. I would at least put in Leave just because we've seen what his highs can be. And so I would still, worry about that. The part that hurts me the most, and this is the most recent part with this team, is that JJ has easily for most of the split has been like the guy who's been elo held. He's had some actually really good performances and been doing, been some of the reasons that the team has been doing well. The first series that they take him out, of course, they have to win the series, and then they keep this new monkey guy in, and he keeps winning because life just has to be cruel like that. So JJ doesn't even get a chance to be better, but it's just become a mix of players now. They don't, they're trying out this. They played one game with this Jamu guy because this vampire guy and the Snake are just, not working together. I mean, the vampire guy's young, and I still don't even know where the Snake came from. And then top lane's just, Ale does not get to play, and he's not been playing well. Especially, if he's not playing well and top lane being weak, there's just nothing to it. And the solo kill guy isn't really mattered anything. It is kind of mad to me because just thinking about the other teams, the other worst teams like Ultra Prime and Rare Atom. I don't know if they are now because they're starting to maybe pick up a little bit, but there's been arguments for that EDG's been the worst team in the league.
Oh, I think that's legit. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know the time you could ever say that. Like, when has EDG ever been the worst team?
Oh, never. But here's the thing I would say is I think the only thing that would even stop people doing that is looking at the name EDG and seeing the names of famous players that we knew were good. I feel like if you could do like a true blind, taste test like Pepsi back in the day, and you could take the nameplates off and show people, I think people might vote this the worst team in the LPL, mate. Like, it's actually wild how much... Think about it. It's not even like they were giant moves. Like, okay, Mako left. Like, yeah, true, he's one of the most legendary players ever. But you would think, like, right, you've still got the Leave guy, you've got Ali, you've got JJ. That's a pretty solid core pieces. Like, the joke is without Mako's nothing, apparently. And then I'll tell you what, I have so many times over the years flamed Fofo in the LPL because he was supposed to be like the fucking next one of the LMS who was going to be like Maple and fucking lead the way and be amazing. And man, he was always like slightly underwhelming for me, except like the odd split of the LPL. But mate, this fucking split just makes me feel like, well, exactly, like, be careful what you wish for. Like, fuck, can Fofo come back now, please, Fofo? No. So can he come back and play? Like, we'd like to win some games because this isn't it, is it? Like, the whole team's just collapsed. It's just bad.
It's a pretty surprising collapse, especially when they were, I think, second place? They were second place at the end of Spring Split with almost this exact roster, just pretty much Mako being different. But, obviously leaving or Leave getting banned hurt some things. And the team just hasn't worked because of this Fisher guy's not good.
If you notice, by the way, whenever people get like punishment in the LPL, that's based on something disciplinary. So if people don't know, like, that guy did a whole bunch of stuff himself. Like, I mean, there was one thing where suppose he made like a bunch of fake accounts and then like flamed JJ's own jungler, like something mad like that. He did all sorts of crazy stuff. If you notice, it's that whenever they get punished for that, I don't know if it's that then that it changes the team environment or the player themselves gets affected, but it feels like anyone who ever gets any mad story like that, it's not that often they continue being good. It almost feels like it gets to them like Fame style or some shit, mate, because that guy's never been the same. He was a stud before that story, and then they had to use the eye drama, and then after that, it's just not the same player. I mean, the joke is they don't even play him themselves. There's something just going on, right?
Right. I'm always curious about that because it's happened a couple times too, where like It's almost like
it's fucking ADCs too, if you notice. It's like
it does happen to ADCs.
There's loads of them, yeah. Name, it's like it's always the same.
Name.
It's always the same allegation. It's like something fangirls, right?
I mean, I think it is like maybe some level of just like shame or just like, upset from the tournament or just like a cultural thing that like in the West we don't understand as much. The whole shame aspect I know in Korea is quite something. So I wasn't sure as much with China, but I think it's certainly present. I think it kind of happened with Bo as well when Bo had the whole match fixing scandal in 2021, which was a little bit unfair because of the different reasons we won't get into. But he, really just didn't play after that. He, even though his first he won his first like 8 games in a row and he was carrying FPX and it looks like he was going to be the savior of this team because they were playing the Beichuan guy because Tian was hurt or sick or something. And he wasn't doing good. So we thought Bo was going to be the guy. And then he kind of gets shunned away as well. It's a weird thing. Yeah. And it happened with Name too, which will always make me upset because he's my favorite ADC ever. Sure. And he could have been so much more than what happened. It's a shame when,
Here's the banger stat for you. Here's the line. Bear in mind, there's no way you'll convince some fan now to go back to 2014 and watch old League of Legends and also the joke is because it's bloody LPL. Half the VODs are probably on like Weibo or some weird site you can't fucking find anywhere. But all I'll tell you is this, guys. Here's the banger line that you can say to this day. To this day, in 2024, Name still has more LPL titles than Uzi. Case closed. Because it's just a banger line, isn't it? Like,
it is just a banger line.
About who's better, but it's a fucking. The point is, at least that should hook people's interest. You'd think, right? You'd think, come on, isn't that interesting? In fact, I think when I looked it up, dude, he might even still be the ADC who has the most titles, believe it or not.
I'd have to think about that, but yeah, I mean, he certainly has up there with the most. I mean, because LPL, so many different people win.
As far as I know, I think Deft had 2, and then Uzi has 2, and then Jackie Love has I think 1 maybe. Maybe 2, because he might have had one with top, so maybe he had 2. But I think he actually might be the one with the most, believe it or not. It's crazy because it just shows how that one position. To be fair, obviously there's been an insane amount of ADCs from LPL because the joke is like ADC's not actually won that many times considering you think of the region associated with ADC, don't you? Whereas the joke is all the mid laners who have all the titles, mate. They're the ones who just rack them like Xiaohu, Knight, fucking Rookie. These guys, I mean, Rookies don't have that many, but they've still got a decent amount.
Yeah, it's the Name story is always interesting because you're right that League fans won't go and watch stuff, especially because looking for old Name VODs is like you do have to go to like weird Chinese sites and kind of go on a investigation to find it. What people don't realize is because Uzi won his 2 titles with I forgot. I don't remember. I think Let Me was their top laner, but yeah, you had Xiaohu in the mid lane. He had Ming in his bot lane, and then he had Karsa in his jungle. Who Name had for those 3 wins, for those 3 split lanes, I don't know if anybody will recognize any of the names except Clearlove. Like they're just nobodies, and he carried them. And I just wish that didn't get forgotten because that was in the era where we didn't really have an English LPL broadcast because they wanted to pretend. They wanted to pretend that NA and EU were the only regions.
I mean, the joke is, if people don't know, it literally was those like janky, like amateur setups where I found Froscore and literally doing that year of the LPL. That's how bad it was back then. No, I'm with you. Like, luckily, I probably will do a piece of content on that eventually because I do feel like that story was never properly told, and it's the worst example of all time of fans not watching the LPL, then watching that Worlds and going, this guy sucks. Like they've done about with Knight and Chovy like every year for like 5 years now. So that story does need to be told properly sometime. But it is going to watch the games though. So
no, it's annoying that Name thing has always hurted me because it's just one tournament and he didn't even play like horrible. He just played mediocre for that team. They also got an easy group, so it's hard to say if like they would have done better or worse in an easier or harder group. It's not like the amount of times I've seen Uzi run it down, especially like in big playoff games, is way more egregious than anything Name ever did. Name just got unlucky because when he got moved to that Royal Club team, he actually replaced Uzi when he left EDG in 2014, and he was going to play with that Royal Club team, but then everything just fell apart after that because that was the team that was like pinging on the map to like where to go instead of talking, so that was never going to work anyway. I mean, it's a shame what happened to him. I still love Name though. His story deserves to be told.
By the way, what do you actually think of the, like, you know, there's a big thing that's been going on after the LEC split, where all these people, all these coaches and famous figures in the LEC were like, this is the worst split ever, like the whole West just looks garbage right now, right? They were trying to argue that the game in general is just in like a bad state. What do you think of that? Because like I have to say, I don't really know where I come down on that. I mean, the problem is the LPL is just so massive, isn't it? It's not really like, I've always thought the problem is when you paint with broad strokes and you're like, well, this is how the LPL plays. It's like, they don't really, like, let's be real. If you just pick out like the top 5 teams in every LPL split, they're usually all pretty different. So what's your sense in the LPL? Like, is the LPL like the best region? Does the actual quality of the game look good? Does the meta look good? Where are you at on that?
This one is something I think about because it's kind of tricky to define because they have so many more teams than any other region.
Oh,
I think about it like this, where like I think like the LCK is the best if you just look at like the top 2. I think if you put the top 10 in the LPL versus the top 10 or just all 10 in the LCK, I think the LPL easily wins because every time that top 10, even the lower teams have like a decent amount of talent. I don't know why. I mean, I think LEC, LEC hasn't looked great. I mean, they say like, I don't think the state of the game is that bad. I think they're just kind of complaining.
They're just coping. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I think the LPL has looked weird recently because I wouldn't say it's looked as good as it has in the last couple of years because there's been a lot of times where teams have just been kind of, a lot of like the middle tier teams, even like the WEs and the ALs that are like even like in middle places in the league have just kind of messed up games and have really bad like rotations. I think maybe they just don't know how to play around grubs because, teams are kind of figuring out because you have to play for more objectives earlier on than you had to in the past.
Sure.
But I mean, I think the top teams still look very strong. Again, there's a bigger collection of them. I think, we talked about it, like 4 or 5 teams, maybe even, are competing for a top 2 spot. I don't think you can say that about the LCK. I think it's really only the top 2 or 3 that are competing for the spots right now. I would probably still say that the LPL is the best team in the world. If you take away that bottom 7 is actually pretty bad. So you're not losing a lot. You take away that bottom 7, it's just 10 on 10. I would put LPL as the best.
No, I think that's actually a good way to frame it, is if you just had as many teams as the LEC, but you just get to pick the best teams, the LPL suddenly looks insanely stacked. I mean, the joke is, like, for real, their bottom teams at the moment would be like Weibo and LNG guys. That's how insane their league is at the moment. By the way, what do you have any thoughts on either Weibo or WE or something like that? Is any of the teams out there you want to talk about?
Let me think. I don't know. I think WE's kind of overrated. The Wayward guys, actually looked really good for some reason. The split, he's like been way better than anyone expected. I mean, he hasn't been like, best top laner in the world, but he's helped his team way more. I still think Prince doesn't look amazing. Maybe he'll pick something up at some point, but not great. I think the teams at 6 and 3 right now, they'll end up being like 7th through 10th and just kind of middle out in the playoffs. Wave was the one that's actually surprised me because I looked in the beginning and I thought this team was going to be like a top 3, top 4 team. Now they're 4-4 right now. They haven't played as much games as some other teams, but I was, ZDZ and Xiaohu, I heard Nightmare talk really well about Xiaohu. I was still a little bit out on him, especially coming from AL, and wondering if, him being good was just a, best player in a bad team situation, rather than actually working with a good team. And I think Xiaohu's looked decent. I don't think he's looked great. I'm trying to think of who was better, him or Weibo, or not Weibo, Weiwei last year. He's probably looked a bit better than Weiwei, but that's not a big
the summer split was not a great Xiaohu split last year. Yeah, for sure.
No, it wasn't either. Yeah. I mean, Xiaohu doesn't look that great. I mean, he's usually known for being the king of spring. I think Light's their best player, though. I think Light still is young and up and coming. And, we talked about it before where he's kind of like been more underrated in his performances, but has looked really good. And I still think some of that's kind of true where he hasn't like fully gotten to like full on Gala level yet. But I don't know. I wouldn't say I have faith in this team, but their players are good enough. And I think Xiaohu can get fitted into working with Xiaohu well enough to get this team to be at least certainly in playoffs. I think maybe they can go for top 6. It depends on like if IG and WE kind of fizzle out.
The problem they have at the moment in their team is, as you say, like the actual record in the league isn't that great, and they've already lost to some of the like big names. So like they're gonna have to go fucking ham in this like next part of the rest of the teams remaining, basically. Like, because the thing is, they're another team where all you have to do is get in. If you can just even get that last playoff spot, it's possible you can work yourself into form. Remember, you have so many best of fives if you start on the first one. I think you play something like 3 best of fives before you even get top 4. I mean, maybe you become top 4 by winning the third one or something if you start at the beginning. So you can play like essentially like a fucking mini season if you get in the playoffs. The problem is though, it's the Xiaohu one that kills me, because he's another player where it's actually such a bummer for me, because obviously every time Xiaohu and Scout go international, I want to tell all these Western fans, like, if you want to tell me I don't respect Faker, put some fucking respect on these guys' names. Like, these guys are champions and MVPs recently, mate. Like, these guys have done shit in their career. The problem is, like, this is not the split to be saying that, unfortunately. It's actually sad, because I also always thought Xiaohu was one of those players who's like a floor raiser to me. Like, you know, in general, he's never going to be bad. Whereas now he actually does look a bit mess sometimes. Like, maybe if he's on Tristana, he'll carry the game, but fuck, I can't believe we're in a meta where, like, there's just the normal mages and he's not even carrying the game. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
This guy's one of the best of all time. He really was.
Yeah, he's the best Chinese. I don't know if Knight's probably surpassed him as the best Chinese mid laner ever, but if not, he's certainly number 2. He's, his resume speaks for himself. And yeah, I always thought of him, especially in those like 2021, 2022 RNG teams, that he was certainly a talent raiser, because I mean, look at that RNG team. That guy Wei really has not been. He was really good in 2021. He hasn't done that much. And I think we forget that Xiaohu switched to top lane when Crying came in 2021 and became the best top laner in the world, because he was just playing his champions in the top. And I think, no, he didn't win MVP because Viper did. But he was, mega. And I think that needs to be said for, like, his legacy is, like, being able to switch to a lane and still getting your team to win a split. I mean, I can't really say anything about that MSI win, because he was like the whole COVID situation made that whole tournament weird. So you can't really count that as like a big win for him. But yeah, it is sad to see him do poor. I'm a Xiaohu lover, so I always kind of have faith that he's going to pick up at some point. Certainly you would think it's now, because he's the king of spring. So you wouldn't think it would be in the summer, since his, last couple summers haven't been great. But who knows?
Thing is, I'll always have time for their bot lane, mate. Like you said, I always thought the light guy was good. He was even pretty decent when he was in LNG a few years back. And the Crisp is actually still just a good player. Like, I am convinced, mate, that flame at Worlds was just because at the end you were comparing him against Keria. And Keria had everyone looking semi-scoffed. Like, the joke is, I don't even think Missing played bad in that tournament. But even he, because he didn't have the same pool as Keria, looked at the end like, it was that thing on Reddit that fans do where they're like, how can you be a professional and not play? And then they just pick a champion arbitrarily. It's like, bro, because they can't just be the best in the world on like 10 things at once. And so, yeah, maybe that's why Keria will go down as one of the like transcendent players of all time. But I thought Chris was actually pretty good at Worlds, mate. He had some games that were pretty good. He didn't have the same champion pool, obviously, and he was never going to beat Keria in T1, but it's just a good player for me. Like, it's another player where mechanically he's always fucking got it. You can always know he can pick up a fucking hook champ and just do something in a game. He can just do something.
I think he's one of the most underrated supports, maybe not just right now, but ever, because he's really never had been like that bad for a split at least since 2019. He's always played well, even with, iffy ADCs. I think he helped LWX more than, LWX helped himself. He just, you've got Ming and Mako, and, a bunch of other supports now. You have On, that are kind of always overshadowing him, but he's still, I agree that he's mechanically, one of the most solid, one of the most consistent. And you are right that it's very annoying. I don't get this when people do this, that they think that, number one is number one in terms of ranking people, and then like almost everybody else like doesn't even deserve to get talked about, which is ridiculous, because Chris still played well at Worlds. I think Keria is the best engage support I've ever seen. It going in support. And I think at one point, or maybe even now, he's going to pass up Mad Life in terms of that regards, and even that the transcendence of the role he's kind of got going on right now. He's just going to be. I think right now he can compare to nobody in terms of a support. He's a very, very special player. So underrating people like Missing and Chris just because, oh, look how good Keria is. It's like other people do good as well. One person's greatness shouldn't cloud others' greatness.
Sure. Right, maybe one last topic. Is there one last thing you want to talk about in this one?
Let me think. I don't know if there's any other teams. All the other.
I've got a question. Who would your MVP of the split be so far?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me think. Would I say Jean? I don't know. I think I would say Ruler. I would probably still say Ruler.
I mean, that's fair. He certainly doesn't do anything wrong, put it that way. I can't think of bad games.
Right. I mean, Knight's, always going to be in consideration as well. In terms of, I think you do need to start arguing. I still need to see a couple more games. Like if he continues the whole split doing as well as he is, I think you do need to actually argue Milkyway for being MVP. If he continues to play at this level, carrying this team, I think that's, this team's a bunch of nobodies.
You can certainly make a case, if you want to. Yeah. Like if we're doing the thing, because I don't have a problem with this. If we're making it like your team itself doesn't have to actually be at the top of the league, you're not doing like NBA rules. If we're just going on like that logic of which one player was the most instrumental in their wins, I mean, it probably is him, right? Like if he doesn't win, who the fuck would win on that team?
I don't think you can think anybody's going to make top 3 All-Pro, let alone top 6 All-Pro on that team. I mean, I think he definitely needs to get the shout. I don't like it when it's just best player, best team, which isn't even the case. Like when Lehens got it last year and when it wasn't maybe not the best team and certainly not the best player on that team. So, I mean, I can't super be mad if it goes tonight because he's always just going to be so consistent and so, so well in the lane, No, I can't give it to him. Yeah, Ruler is, certainly always going to be a shout. Yeah, you said he doesn't really have bad games. I think he has a good chance of going down as the best ADC ever. I think if Jun doesn't have the last couple bad games he's had and continues to be well, I think he can be a shout as well for MVP. But Milky Way, I think, is definitely the most exciting prospect for it.
Because I actually think the reason why I left that question at the end is I think it's actually the most wide open MVP race I've ever seen, mate.
It is.
I really feel like, no joke, you could almost take the best player off the top 5 or 6 teams and it would be legit. Because as you say, if I'm just going off eye test, people like Knight and Ruler are unbelievable. But at the same time, there's sometimes games where they just chill and they're just being chilling and someone else goes off. So, but meanwhile, people like Bane actually haven't been that crazy. It's been a very interesting split in that regard. I mean, the joke is actually Rookie's been pretty good, but it's just the problem is, I mean, I'll tell you right now what's going to kill him is he's never going to be Rookie from 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So people will do that thing that they did to Mickey X this split in LEC where he still was one of the best supports, but because he was cracked out last year and he was clearly the best, because he obviously wasn't as good, it made people think, right, he's not as good, which means he's not the best anymore. So it's that sort of logic. So I feel if you're Rookie, it's weird because obviously the joke is they do give Faker that status, but if you're Rookie, you'll never actually get that status because you won't be as good as you were at your prime. You'll just be a really good player, which is luckily that's still pretty good, but it's not the same. It's not the same as people just worshipping the ground you walk on. Because sadly, for some reason, maybe it is the Korean and China thing. Rookie's never really gotten that same treatment that Faker does in that regard. To me, I don't get it because the fact he's even still playing is amazing. If I was an LPL fan, I'd be so hyped. It's like The Undertaker or something still being in wrestling, mate. Surely it's the dream to have someone like that still compete and still be at the top level,
I kind of get why, I think it's unreasonable why this is, but I think I kind of have an explanation, at least from an American perspective, and I can see it. So how, I'll give the sports analogy to kind of turn it in. So when Odell Beckham Jr. had that amazing catch that everybody went crazy for, I think everybody still always has that in their mind, even though he's been never that good. And
the joke is that was 10 years ago now. Yeah,
I know it was a long time ago now, especially. Yeah. I think even though people know that Faker play, that's the most famous play in the history. People, when I just play League with random people, they may not know a thing about, that there even is Chinese League of Legends, but they know that Faker play. And I think that always sticks in that head and carries people because especially in America, we're always so big on the moments, those moments always stick in it more. And we don't always see the other side well enough. I mean, he's the other thing too, is that he's, still playing well and he's winning championships, which again is also going to kind of cloud Rookie only, having 1 Worlds and 1 LPL split. So, it really does show that people don't look at the games, they're oh, look at the best player, this player, that means they're the best. Oh, look at all these championships they're winning, also means they're the best. They're not actually, if they're looking at the player, then they don't have very good eyes, then their eye test isn't good, or they're just not watching it all and don't understand, why. So that's to me is why Rookie doesn't get the same kind of accolades as Faker. I guess being number 2 as well. You know, people ignore that number 2's way more.
I will say he does have the problem where he just doesn't have a super famous, iconic player. Like, I could pick out some mega insane players like Oriana or something. The problem is, you're right. Like, the joke is, even Uzi I had that, like, Vayne clip from that same Worlds. Like, they all, like, everyone has, like, some super iconic one that stands out. So, yeah, that is, I agree, that is one of the problems. Whereas, like, to me, I mean, the joke is, if someone even asks me, like, what's an amazing rookie game? Like, I am thinking of things like when he used to play Oriana really aggressively, which to a pleb sounds like, oh, Oriana. It's like, did you hear the last part of the sentence? I said he played it really aggressively. Like, the joke is, I always used to watch him and just be like, mate, this is the champion people make fun of when you get put on it. And he's just fucking unbelievable on it. Like, he just, like, his Oriana looks like he does twice as much damage, you know?
Yeah, he hits everything. He's, you know, sometimes some people just take their mage champions, and if you're just a really good player, you can just make it like, you know, Oriana, you can make her look like a carry champion. It's a very impressive skill when people take mage champions and, you know, are able to carry the game with them like that. Victor is a little bit easier to carry with, but people do the same with him.
So I don't actually know who I'd plump for. Like, I could go a few different ways. Like, I think the ruler one's not a bad shot, because, like I say, when I just think of, like, who's actually, of my main names, I could find a game a bunch of them played, but I can't really think of one for ruler. I feel like he's sort of mastered his craft, so I think that's a good shout. I also think in a world where 369 and Knight leave your team, I think it'd be totally legitimate to expect the team to drop off and they're right back in contention again. Like, as we're saying, like, the joke is they're probably just second best now, which is still amazing. So, no, I'm with you. I think that could even be a legit shout. Events come and go, fame rises and then falls away. You have a job, you lose a job. You do one thing, you have to move on to another. But one of the cool things about my career is I have my own support network who's always got my back. So I always know I can rely on support to do the work I want to do and talk the way I want to talk and not have to follow certain rules that others arbitrarily have to follow. And that support group is, of course, called the Skrilluminati, my Patreon community. This video and all the others on my channel was kindly supported by Matt Pugnatio Rajcula, Frisky, Ahmed Hadjou, Tobias Bernasconi, Torin, Tosh, Jensen Goh, Animosity, and you know it, always my main man Jerky's minion, rocking with me, ride or die. Would you like to suggest a topic or a guest for a future episode of Reflections or a talk show? Do you want teasers? Find out who the upcoming guests are? Maybe you want to ask me a question for my video AMA, where I tend to go quite in depth, or perhaps you want to take part in one of those really long donated discussions where we talk about whatever you're into in esports. Well, if any of those perks or any of the others catch your fancy, join the Skrilluminati today via the Patreon link in the description box, where? Down below.